All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to the glorification of Srīmad Bhāgavatam. We continue with Canto 2, the Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 3, Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart, and verses 2 to 7. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yenah Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshtarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So Canto 2, the Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 3, Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart, verses 2 to 7. It's interesting how these verses where the material desires that they're all combined, 2 to 7. In Bhagavad Gita, of course, we see, I think in chapter 13, 8 to 12, they also combine giving the 20 items of the devotional service, 17 for the karmis, 3 for mixed devotees, and 1 for pure devotees. Here we see these items of material desires are given, and what should we do to achieve those material desires. Brahma varchas kamastu yajeta brahmana patim Indram indriya kamastu praja kama prajapatin. We'll see the word kama. Kama means desire. It's come here many times. Devim mayam tu shri kamas tejas kamo vibhavasum vasu kamo vasun rudran viri kamo taviryavan annadya kamas tvaditim swarga kamo dite sutan vishwan devan rajya kama sadhyan sama samsadhako visham Ayush kamo shvino devo ashvino devo pushti kama ilam yajet pratishta kama purusho rodashi lokamataro rupa bhikamo gandharvan stri kamo apsara urvashim adhipatya kama sarvesham yajeta parmeshnam yagnam yajet yashash kama kosha kama prachetasam Vidyakamastu girisham dampatyartha umam satim. Of course, those who know Hindi a little bit or Sanskrit, you would have by now understood who to worship for which material benefit. Synonym, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Brahma, the Absolute, Varchasa, effulgence, Kama, too. But one who desires in that way, Yajeta, do worship, Brahmana of the Vedas, Patim, the Master, Indram, the King of Heaven, Indriya Kamahatu, but one who desires strong sense organs, Praja Kamaha, one who desires many offspring, Prajapatin, the Prajāpatis, Devim, the goddess, Mayam, into the mistress of the material world. Interesting. Mayam, unto the mistress of the material world. Tu, but, Shri Kamaha, one who desires beauty, Teja, power, Kamaha, one who so desires, Vibhavasum, the fire god, Vasu Kamaha, one who wants wealth, Vasun, the Vasu demigods, Rudran, the Rudra expansions of Lord Śiva, Virya Kamaha, one who wants to be very strongly built, Atha, therefore, Viryavan, the most powerful, Annadya, grains, Kamaha, one who so desires, two, but, Aditim, Aditi, mother of the demigods, Swarga, heaven, Kamaha, so desiring, Adite, Sutan, the sons of Aditi, Vishwan, Vishwadeva, Devan, demigods, Rajya Kamaha, those who hanker for kingdoms, Sadhyan, the Sadhya demigods, Samsadhakaha, what fulfills the wishes, Visham, of the mercantile community, Ayuhu Kamaha, desirous of long life, Asvina, the two demigods known as the Ashwini brothers, Devo, the two demigods. Pushtikamaha, one who desires a strongly built body. Ilam, the earth. Yajet, must worship. Pratisthakamaha, one who desires good fame or stability in a post. Purushaha, such men. Rodasi, the horizon. Lokamataro, and the earth. Rupa, beauty. Abhikamaha, positively aspiring for. Gandharvan, the residents of the Gandharva planet, who are very beautiful and are expert in singing. Strikamaha, one who desires a good wife. Apsara Urvashim, the society girls of the heavenly kingdom. Adipatya Kamaha, one who desires to dominate others. Sarvesham, everyone. Yajita, must worship. Parameshtinam, Brahma, the head of the universe. Yagyam, the personality of Godhead. Yajet, must worship. Yasha Kamaha, one who desires to be famous. Kosha Kamaha, one who desires a good bank balance. Prachetasam, the treasurer of heaven known as Varuṇa. The treasurer of heaven known as Varuṇa. Vidya Kamahatu, but one who desires education. Girisham, the Lord of the Himalayas, Lord Śiva. As we know, Lord Shiva is one of the names as Girisha. Dampatya Arthaha, and for conjugal love, Umam Satim, the chaste wife of Lord Shiva known as Uma. Translation: one who desires to be absorbed in the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence should worship the master of the Vedas, Lord Brahmā, or Bṛhaspati, the learned priest. One who desires powerful sex should worship the heavenly king Indra. And one who desires good progeny should worship the great progenitors called the Prajāpatis. One who desires good fortune should worship Durgā Devi, the superintendent of the material world. One desiring to be very powerful should worship fire, and one who aspires only after money should worship the Vasus. One should worship the Rudra incarnations of Lord Shiva if he wants to be a great hero. One who wants a large stock of grains should worship Aditi. One who desires to attain the heavenly planets should worship the sons of Aditi. One who desires a worldly kingdom should worship Vishwadeva. And one who wants to be popular with the general mass of population should worship the Sadhya demigod. One who desires a long span of life should worship the demigods known as the Ashwini Kumars. And a person desiring a strongly built body should worship the earth. One who desires stability in his post should worship the horizon and the earth combined. One who desires to be beautiful should worship the beautiful residents of the Gandharva planet. And one who desires a good wife should worship the Apsaras and the Urvashī society girls of the heavenly kingdom. One who desires domination over others should worship Lord Brahmā, the head of the universe. One who desires tangible fame should worship the personality of Godhead. And one who desires a good bank balance should worship the demigod Varuṇa. If one desires to be a greatly learned man, he should worship Lord Shiva. And if one desires a good marital relationship, he should worship the chaste goddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva. Beautiful translation. Purport: by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. There are different modes of worship for different persons desiring success in particular subjects. The conditioned soul living within the purview of the material world cannot be an expert in every type of materially enjoyable asset, but one can have considerable influence over a particular matter by worshipping a particular demigod, as mentioned above. Actually, because this is a long, these are long verses, these are long translations, and this is a long purport, I would request everyone, because of the consideration of time, please hear the purport very carefully, because we might not have time to elaborate much on that. So I'll start again from the beginning of the purport. There are different modes of worship for different persons desiring success in particular subjects. The conditioned soul living within the purview of the material world cannot be an expert in every type of materially enjoyable asset, but one can have considerable influence over a particular matter by worshipping a particular demigod, as mentioned above. Ravan was made a very powerful man by worshipping Lord Shiva, and he used to offer severed heads to please Lord Shiva. He became so powerful by the grace of Lord Shiva that all the demigods were afraid of him until he at last challenged the personality of Godhead Sri Ramachandra and thus ruined himself. In other words, all such persons who aspire after gaining some or all of the material objects of enjoyment, or the gross materialistic persons, are on the whole less intelligent, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:20. It is said here, it is said there, that those who are bereft of all good sense, or those whose intelligence is withdrawn by the deluding energy of Māyā, aspire to achieve all sorts of material enjoyment in life by pleasing the various demigods, or by advancing in material civilization under the heading of scientific progress. The real problem of life in the material world is to solve the question of birth, death, old age, and disease. No one wants to change his birthright. No one wants to meet death. No one wants to be old or invalid, and no one wants diseases. But these problems are solved neither by the grace of any demigod nor by the so-called advancement of material science. In the Bhagavad Gita, as well as in the Srīmad Bhāgavatam, such less intelligent persons have been described as devoid of all good sense. Sūta Goswami said that out of the 8.4 million species of living entities, the human form of life is rare and valuable. And out of those rare human beings, those who are conscious of the material problems are rarer still. And the still more rare persons are those who are conscious of the value of the Srīmad Bhāgavatam, which contains the messages of the Lord and his pure devotees. Very important. And the still more rare persons are those who are conscious of the value of the Srīmad Bhāgavatam, which contains the messages of the Lord and his pure devotees. Death is inevitable for everyone, intelligent or foolish. But Parikshit Maharaj has been addressed by the Goswamis as the Manishi, or the man of highly developed mind, because at the time of death, he left all material enjoyment and completely surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Lord by hearing his messages from the right person, Sukadeva Goswami. But aspirations for material enjoyment by endeavoring persons are condemned. Such aspirations are something like the intoxication of the degraded human society. I will repeat this. Such aspirations, so in the previous line, Prabhupada says, but aspirations for material enjoyment by endeavoring persons are condemned. Such aspirations are something like the intoxication of the degraded human society. Intelligent persons should try to avoid these aspirations and seek instead the permanent life by returning home back to Godhead. Bhaktivedanta Purports ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet nashtaprayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. So today is Mokshada Ekadashi, the advent of Bhagavad Gita. Yesterday we celebrated the Gita Jayanti very beautifully in the temple. All credit goes to Rahul Prabhu, to Abhishek Prabhu and Sundari Sita Mataji for organizing such a wonderful festival. You know, every detail was taken care of, and everyone really benefited from the experience of the chanting of all the 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita in one sitting. So those of us who could sit there and hear and recite the 700 verses get immense spiritual benefit. In this verse and in this purport, we can see that Prabhupada is speaking about basically 3 points. The first one is that we should approach higher authority, as here Sukadeva Goswami says that someone who even wants to satisfy karma, all the desires, they're approaching different demigods. So approaching higher authority. We can see, like when especially the case of Radhanath Maharaj, if you see they organize big, yatra festivals. We are taking devotees, but we are taking only 50, 60 devotees. Radhanath Maharaj takes 10, 12,000 devotees, and all the arrangements are made. Even in places the arrangements are not there. Why? Because the devotees have approached the spiritual master, Radhanath Maharaj, and under his guidance, all the desires are fulfilled. So similarly, when we approach all these devtas, Prabhupada says here in the beginning of the purport that the conditioned soul living within the purview of the material world cannot be an expert in every type of materially enjoyable asset. And that's why to have considerable influence over a particular matter, one must worship a particular demigod. But of course, as we move on, we can also see that Prabhupada is giving every living entity two choices, either to go for temporary material or permanently spiritual, whichever we choose. And then Prabhupada says, of course, very clearly that people who are choosing temporary material have got less intelligence. And then Prabhupada speaks about our rare human birth. And he says, how can we become Manishi? Manishi means someone who's intelligent. Like in the previous verse, we also saw that Parikshit Maharaj is described as a Manishi, even though he has heard many, many things how to approach Krishna, but he still wants to hear more about Krishna, and that is what makes him Manishi. So here we see Sukadeva Goswami has already answered Maharaj Parikshit's questions. Yes. How, what is the way of perfection for all persons, especially those who are on the threshold of death, just are about to die? And then also instructed him about what a man should hear, chant, remember, worship, and also what he should not do. So we've seen in the previous verses that we must shrotavya kirtitavya dheyas pujyasya nityada, that we should always hear, chant, remember, and worship about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then now he is also defined who is an intelligent person, who is able to see the Paramatma, who is able to worship and surrender unto that Paramatma. So Maharaj Parikshit now is proving himself that he is an intelligent person, he is a thoughtful person. Why? Because he decides to hear more and more about Krishna at the time of his death. Prabhupada says, a Manishinam, a thoughtful person like Maharaj Parikshit, must therefore take to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna and fully surrender himself in devotional service, hearing, chanting, and all the other devotional services. Now we can see here that yes, not all human beings are intelligent, and not everyone is understanding the importance of a rare human life. Even in our case, before we came to the shelter of Prabhupada, we had no idea of what human life is. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes in the beginning two types of people, Kripana and Brahmana. Kripana is one who does not know the value of the rare human life. And Brahmana is the one who knows the value of Aryan Kripana, right? Brahmana Kripana. Anyway, I don't know whether it's Aryan or Brahmana. But Kripana is, of course, the one who does not understand the value of the human life. So when we do not understand the value of this rare human life, and Prabhupada in this purport, what we are studying today, is speaking about the rarity of human life. First of all, there are 8.4 million species of life. And then he says the human form of life is rare and valuable. And out of those human beings who are conscious of material problems are rarer still. That means those are seekers, those are transcendentalists. But again, in that there are so many people who still do not understand. And then Prabhupada says, and the still more rare persons are those who are conscious of the value of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Why? Because Bhāgavatam contains the messages of Lord and his pure devotees. And once we start hearing, and once we start accepting, and once we start implementing these messages of the Lord and his pure devotees in our lives, then we can easily conquer birth, death, old age, and disease. Prabhupada says, the four major problems of life are birth, death, old age, and disease. Okay, so we have so far heard, that we need to surrender to the Lord. But despite hearing this, many of us find that we still have material desires. What to do? Can we satisfy our desire without neglecting the unavoidable death, the inevitable death? The death is coming, as Bhagavatam Prabhu mentioned. Prabhupada says, and who is not on the threshold of death? All of us are. Now, we have left Bharat and we have come to this country, Australia. And we have to understand that in the Vedic culture, there were still people who were, trying to ignore the obvious: birth, death, old age, and disease. Right? When people wanted to fulfill their material desires, they'll completely forget about these four problems. But in Vedic culture, we are actually trained and people are taught to fulfill the desires by worshipping a superior, a devata, a demigod. So even when we want to satisfy our desires, we can do it only after submitting to a higher power. What happens is that the predominant mood in the West is to barely acknowledge superiors. I want to live my own life, independent life. There's no superiors. Even in the office, someone wants to leave the job. Okay, here's my 2 weeks notice and I'm gone. Very few people in the West actually come to the position of surrendering themselves voluntarily. One time, one devotee asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, I don't like bowing down. I don't like to surrender myself. Prabhupada said, that's okay. But one day you will have to surrender to death. One day you will have to bow down to death. So why not now? Why not understand the importance of using this human life in service and start serving? So instead of supplicating ourselves voluntarily, in the West, what people do? That no, the Western culture instructs, no. Just focus on your power, focus on your abilities, focus on your intelligence, and then try to enjoy material life. So this way, without surrendering to any higher authority, the society degrades itself. And here Prabhupada says very, very powerful statement. At the end, when I repeated this statement, he says, aspirations for material enjoyment by endeavoring persons are condemned. Such aspirations are something like the intoxication of the degraded human society. If you understand that, when a person is intoxicated, even the walking is not straight, he's just like going everywhere. And you can see the society also is going everywhere. No direction, no fixed plan. But when we follow Srīmad Bhāgavatam, when we follow the Vedic system, what happens is the training, the teachings given by the Vedic system actually uplifts us, purifies us. Why? Because even when we attempt to fulfill our desires, we are forced to face our own ultimate insignificance and dependence. That I cannot do much. What can one person do? Yesterday we saw, when I congratulated Rahul Prabhu for a wonderful festival, he said, Prabhu, everyone did so much. The devotees, everyone just came and everyone recited nicely. The timings were maintained perfectly. There was a midterm snack. There was nice prasadam afterwards. Wonderful kirtan. So everyone came together. So when we understand that individually on my own, I am very insignificant, I have to dependent on others, on my superior, on the devatas, on Lord Krishna ultimately, then we can not only satisfy our material desires. Yesterday, all our material, at least mine, in my case, all my desires were satisfied. In what way? I could hear everything very nicely. I was in a very nice environment where the energy was very powerful. I could sing and chant and dance. I could still do little service. I could honor prasadam nicely. have nice association, all these things were happening. So the desires were satisfied, and at the same time, devotion was, devotion was experienced in that environment. So we can see here that when we supplicate to the higher authority, we also can achieve more. But then what happens here? Prabhupada ultimately and Sukadeva Goswami, this is verse ending verse 7. Immediately in the 10th verse, Sukadeva Goswami is going to say, no, forget all these things. Of course, he has to speak because there are, among the sages gathered in Naimisharanya, there are sages and devotees of all kinds. There are people with material desires, there are people with desires, the sages with desires for liberation, there are sages with desires just to serve, no material desires. So when you have an assembly of all these variety of people, you have to give them these choices. So these first 3 chapters of second canto fulfills the desires of almost everyone. But then ultimate conclusion is akama sarva kama va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. In the 10th verse of this chapter, Sukadeva Goswami is going to describe that yes, akama sarva kama va, whether you have no material desire or we have all material desires, or moksha kama udaradi, you have the desire to achieve liberation. What you must do? Tivrena bhakti yogena, with intense devotional service, yajeta purusham param. You must worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. Uddhavji, at the end of Uddhav Gita, there's a beautiful chapter, I think it's called Devotional Service in the 11th canto, where Uddhavji is glorifying the Lord very, very beautifully. And Sukadeva Goswami, following in footsteps of Krishna, also is doing the same thing. He's for people of different proclivities, of different interests. He's giving all the options: Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Mishra Yoga. Everything is giving. But then, as Uddhavji wonderfully glorifies Krishna, Sukadeva Goswami is following in his footsteps. Uddhavji says, just as a bee extracts nectar from a flower without harming the flower. So here important thing is without harming the flower. Lord Shri Krishna extracts the essence of all Vedic knowledge without disturbing the elaborate system of Vedic advancement. So Vedas have given you different systems of advancing in spiritual life. And without disturbing this elaborate system, Krishna, like a bee, extracting the essence, extracting the nectar. So Uddhavji says, in other words, Lord Shri Krishna establishes himself as the goal of Vedic knowledge without disturbing preliminary inferior processes that may be applicable to grossly materialistic men. So whatever type of person you are, if you follow Lord Krishna, if you follow the Vedic system, progress is guaranteed. So this way we can see that Uddhavji and then Sukadeva Goswami are concluding their offering by paying their obeisances to the spiritual master of the entire universe, Lord Shri Krishna. For us, we have the higher authorities as our senior devotees in the yatra. We have Prabhupada disciples. We have our gurus. We have Prabhupada. All these Vaishnavas are there. So if we want to become Manishi, if we want to achieve this success of this rare human birth, we should follow what Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says in the Antya Leela very beautifully. I like this verse very much, and I've quoted this verse very many times. So this is a prayer to all our superiors, especially the sadhus. Durgā me pathi me andhasya skhalat padgater muhur swakripa yasti danena santah santavavalam ambanam. So Krishnadas Kaviraj says, and this is a wonderful prayer we can meditate upon today, that Durgā me pathi me andhasya, that my path is very difficult, and andhasya, I am blind. Skhalat pad gater muhur. My feet are slipping again and again. So first of all, this difficult path of material existence. On top of that, I'm blind and my feet are slipping again and again. And what hope do I have? Swakripa yasti danena santah santva avalambanan. Avalamban means to take support. So Krishnadas Kaviraj says, therefore, may the saints help me by granting me the stick of their mercy as my support. As Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, all we are made up of is the mercy of all the Vaishnavas. So may we follow in the footsteps of all these Vaishnavas, Srila Prabhupada, take lessons from Śrīmad Bhagavad Gita today, Bhāgavatam, meditate on these wonderful points which Prabhupada has given in this purport, meditate on this prayer, and then make our day, week, month, year, and life successful. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If anyone has any questions or comments, please unmute and share. I can see a love heart from Bhagavatasra Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu, very much. I didn't know that you are so tech savvy. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, wonderful. So may you all have a wonderful day. Mokshada Ekadashi ki jai. You can focus on chanting more, hearing more. As we know, especially Gujaratis, Ekadashi is not an exercise in botanical prowess of what to eat and what not to eat, but it's an opportunity to reflect, to introspect, and to hear and chant more. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.